All right, it's 6:30 on my watch. I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Plan Commission meeting to order on Wednesday, February 8th. It is 6:30 p.m. We are holding this meeting as a hybrid meeting, meaning that we are both in the Village Hall as well as remote, like myself, on Zoom. The Zoom link is at the top of the agenda, and there's also an audio call-in number as well at the top of the agenda. We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So find a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, then we have public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand in the hall there or on Zoom, and share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of folks who would like to speak. So Lisa, you'll have to be my eyes in the hall there.
Yeah, John, just a quick note here. So we do have quite a few people here. So just to make it clear, this would be just a public comment section on anything. The public hearing on the rezone would be the separate agenda item.
Oh, yes, sorry, Rick, you were correct. So thank you for the clarification. So we do have as Rick said, we do have a public hearing on the rezoning in a little bit further down the agenda. So if you have comments about that, please hold off on that point. So any general comments, non-specific agenda? Okay. Then next we'll move to discuss and consider the meeting minutes from our Plan Commission meeting held on January 11th. Any questions, comments, or edits regarding the meeting minutes as presented or consideration for motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Alex.
Second.
Thank you, Troy. It's been motion second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, then all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, then we move, I'd like to open a public hearing. This is public's opportunity to provide input on an application from DBW Holdings LLC for a zoning map amendment to rezone parcel 0811-321-9501-1 and parcel 0811-321-8311-1, and finally parcel 0811-321-9376-1. This is located north of County T and west of County N, from rural holdings to planned industrial. So with that is for the public hearing, usually we have the applicant, if they're present, share their reasons why they want the rezoning in this case, and then hear from staff, and then open it up to public, because there might be if there's a question that may already be answered in one of those two presentations. So with that is one of the representatives from Houston's in the room or on Zoom?
They're on their way up.
All right, thank you.
I'm Dennis Richardson with RG Houston Company. I'm senior engineer and safety director at RG Houston Company. We've had discussions with the village, with Aaron Ruth, on potential uses for the property and what's been proposed with the Amazon development next to us and the development to the north of them. We feel like the planned industrial is a proper zoning for that property of ours. So we figured it would be easier to get the zoning approved now and to market it that way with the zoning pre-approved, so the people coming in, purchasing the property would know what their boundaries are and what their limits are for putting up a building. So pretty cut and dry on our end. After talking with Aaron, it seems like that's the best route to go. So we're just here to answer any questions that people might have.
All right, Aaron?
Thanks, John. So as we said, the property is currently zoned RH rural holding. It's been in that category since 2010 when the property was annexed as part of Tom Viken's land. As Dennis mentioned, they're seeking rezoning to planned industrial. In the comprehensive plan, it's designated as planned office or industrial, so this would be consistent with that use in the plan. This area was added to the village's urban service area late last fall, through the urban service area amendment process with CARPC and the DNR. As Dennis said, they're not seeking approval of a specific site plan or a specific project at this time, just seeking the rezoning. So our recommendation, and there's not a separate staff report from Strand, but this was done with Josh at Strand. First condition, no development shall occur without an approved site plan. Kind of obvious, but you come back when there's a specific project.
Correct.
When the property is developed, there would have to be a buffer yard meeting or exceeding village ordinances along the property line with the residential properties. The design of that would be verified during that site plan process when there's a specific project. Third one, there would be no non-emergency access permitted from Alvin Road. All construction traffic and then all future traffic would have to be off of the extension of Faber Road through the Silver property. So obviously until that road is built, you can't really develop this property. And the last one was actually Josh's comments. He might have this, but just looking for the water main to get looped through this property and connected back. Josh, jump in if you had anything more to say about that.
Yeah, just we want to make sure the water connection comes from the south at the large parcel to the southeast of this, and then carries up through Faber Road, just to provide a loop of that entire system. So there'll be some water frontage along this lot on the far east side of the lot, which they would need as part of serving their development.
All right. Aaron or Josh, anything else? Okay. Now, with that information, I'll turn it over to anybody from the public who has a comment here. Again, ask that you share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a number of folks who'd like to speak. With that, Lisa, do we have any forms completed in sitting there that, of folks that want to actually chime in?
Yes, we do, John.
Okay.
John, Lisa handed them over, this is Heidi, over to me if you'd like me to call them up. I have a number of forms here in front of me.
Okay. Thank you, Heidi. Please.
Sure. The first form I have is from Dan Hack. He's at 2676 Silver Ridge Lane. He has that he would like to speak. Would you, please? And we do have a number of people speaking tonight, so do have a 3-minute time reminder.
Well, I mean, as a resident on Silver Ridge Lane, is it on? Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. So as a resident of the Silver Ridge Lane area, I've been on there for since 97, we bought the property in 98. We were assured when we purchased the property, for starters, that that area behind our house would never be developed. The property cannot perk, it cannot be developed without any kind of water and sewer and water. So when we purchased it at the time from Beacon, we were assured that the property could never be developed to the north of us. Now that this is happening, of course, you understand our concern on numerous different things with pollution of light, pollution of noise. You are literally attached to our property behind us. I'm wondering if the developer has taken into effect that there's a large watershed that comes off of Silver Ridge Lane that comes directly to the north of the property there, and there's actually a water retention area that goes right through that area. I'm wondering if that's been taken into consideration with anything with regards to things so far. What's been put in place with regards to the fact if they do start putting industrial park back there for any kind of chemical things, because if the chemicals do start to get dumped back there for whatever reason, whether it be accidentally or just negligently being done, there is tens of thousands of dollars of wells and septics and stuff in our area that could be tainted and destroyed ultimately, because unlike with the Amazon that sheds the other direction away from all of our development and all the houses back here, our water doesn't come from that area. Our water comes from north, from what I understand, and everything would be dumped down into that wetland area. That'd be a concern. Without question, I guess Lyle has been working with for emergency use only, which is police, fire, EMS, with a locked access, because that's not a legal access off Elvin Road. It doesn't have the width to be able to do it. You cannot put a road through there. It doesn't have the width unless you purchase or eminent domain some of the property. You can't legally do it anyways because the road doesn't have the width for it. And I'm positive of that. I've checked on that. So unless you put in a legal width of a road or what it should be, from what I understand, it's not a legal access for a roadway. So there's so many different things with this property and how badly this will turn around and lower the property values of us that live there. We've lived there for a very long time. A lot of us have. We've been vested in our properties. We've been vested in the area. We've been vested in our community. And to come in and slap us in the face by putting industrial in our back lot, if you guys live there, would you put it in your own backyard? If you've lived there for 20 years expecting to live there, when you were told when you bought the place that it would never be built, let alone, when you guys started to go with residential possibly, we understood that, it's got to be able to handle dealing with that area with Amazon and stuff like this. We weren't happy, but we kind of understood if it was going to go to that. But as it sits right now, to put industrial and the light pollution and everything in our backyard like that, it is going to ruin the property values for us. It's going to ruin our quality of life. It's going to ruin why we moved there.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Okay, the next form that I have is from Dwayne Hummel, 2681 Silver Ridge, and you have that you'd like to speak. Thank you.
Well, I'm vehemently opposed to changing that to an industrial park. Like Dan said, we've lived out there for 25 years. We were told because that land didn't perk, that it would not be developed. And again, we've got an easement between I and Dan's property. It's a water storm sewer runoff, and it runs back to that area. And has that issue been addressed? Now, I would ask you, before you vote on this, if this was in your backyard, would you vote to turn this into industrial development? Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Okay, the next form I have is from Ed Moss, 2684 Silver Ridge Lane, and I have that you'd like to speak.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. I have a property that's right by Dwayne and Dan. And again, there's just so many things that are unclear. I'm very concerned about the potential access road, even if they call it for emergency use only. If that's in there, you know what'll end up happening. That'll become a shortcut. So I'm dead against that. I'm dead against having that be an industrial park behind us. We've had concerns and issue, you know, Madison Metropolitan Sewer District has been spreading their sludge on that property behind us now for a number of years. And Madison Metro Sewer District does test our wells and watch for nitrates. And we've slowly seen that start to come up. So, you know, if they're gonna put in industrial park, you're gonna put in a lot of roads, you know, there's major concerns in my mind about protecting our wells. And how are they gonna do that? And if they don't get protected, and there is, like Dan mentioned, if there's any kind of a spill, who's gonna be responsible for that? What's that gonna do to our wells? On the flip side, I wanna make sure that the village isn't gonna force us to take on city water and make us abandon our wells. So how is that gonna come into play? You know, it was one thing when it was Amazon. Now you're gonna bring in another property to the north has been annexed to the village, and it, from what I read on some of the proposals, that's already been approved. So now, is it whatever road's gonna come in through there and bring a road up to the back of this property? You know, they're gonna bring water and sewer in and all electric and utilities. You know, we got problems enough now. We got, I'd say, poor quality utilities coming in. Electric is good, but when it comes to internet service and even phone service, that's struggling. So, you know, what's that gonna do? Is it gonna make it better and improve it, or is it gonna make it worse? So there's a lot of concerns that go with that, and it would make much more sense if they were to make that residential property back there than is to make an industrial park. And all the traffic, now you want to go back to the traffic again. I know we spoke about this with Silver Eagle project, and I don't know where the county and the village is on what they're going to do with Highway N, but this is just another road, and are they going to put in turning lanes? Traffic in that area and through those turnabouts is going to create a nightmare. And for those of us that live in that direction, in the fall of the year now, when farmers are harvesting their crops and they're pulling the semis through those turnarounds, that turnaround on Double T should have been 2 lanes going to the north if they were proposing this kind of expansion with industrial parks. Instead, you've got 1 lane that goes to the north, and right now, in fact, where it splits with a lane that goes to the right, the semis and large ag equipment generally takes the turn to the right and then cuts back through the lane that goes to the north because they can't make that short of a turn. So it's a problem now, and to deny that would be a mistake on your part because nobody's paying attention. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
The next form that I have is from Lyle Updike, 5707 Twin Lane Road in Marshall, and I have that you'd like to speak.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the notification that we received a week ago about this hearing. That really helps on the communication, and also that we had met on the earlier development that was proposed, and that addressed a number of the issues. And I've noted that some of the key issues that we had and the residents of the town, who will be the neighbors, some of those were addressed in the conditions that you put out. First of all, I'd like to say I'd like to be involved in reviewing the site plan a number of the issues that the town residents would have will be addressed in the site plan. And so a lot of the questions that they have tonight will be answered or not when they look at the detailed site plan. I realize that's not available right now. Very important to us is the gate on gated access at Alvin Road. I understand the desire to have some access for emergency vehicles, but that gate should, at a minimum, be not box protected so that only emergency vehicles have access to it. We are waiting for the draft maintenance agreement for Faber Road. So that is necessary to access this property. And so we look forward to reviewing that. We have concerns that will be addressed in your stormwater plan. So that's part of the site plan. But the stormwater plan, there is going to be a complicated issue. Especially we need to deal with, for example, the 90% infiltration standard off that parcel. You did a very good job, I believe, on the last proposal. And so we'll look forward to reviewing that. And then the neighbors in the town who've had an agricultural field in their backyard ever since they bought that property. There are going to be issues when that agricultural use is changed. And you have the ability to mitigate some of those things with the buffering agreement, trying to deal with vision access, noise, directing the lights. Hopefully, the village will look at some of their sustainability goals. There's the option for, green roofs and permeable pavement and a lot of things that would be part of the site plan that can really forward sustainability and also help meet your stormwater requirements. So on that, I'll conclude. We need to listen to what the residents' concerns are. We need to make sure that when you actually have a site plan proposed, that you have a hearing on that so that they can address whether there'll still be concerns. Okay. You can't live someplace for 30 years being next to a farm field and not have concerns when it's changed. But on balance, this will be a regional asset. It'll be providing jobs. It'll be providing supply chain linkage for a number of the jobs in the region. But we need to do what we can to mitigate it. And on that, I'll conclude my remarks. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Lyle.
The next form that I have is Jeff Ozaki at 4881 Elvin Road, and I have that you'd like to speak.
All right, thank you for the chance to speak before your commission again, too, in opposition of the zoning change. While I do not fully object, certainly to the idea of some proposed business options, there is a big difference between office and industrial, both of which kind of fall under that planned industrial zoning. Previously approved planned industrial site plans, we would feel are kind of non-compatible with residential housing, and so we certainly wouldn't want to see that happen again with this parcel. Given that the village and our town both have the preservation of farmland in their comprehensive plan, that this is an active farmland parcel, and it's currently surrounded on one side by farmland, on another side by forest and farmland, and on two sides by residential. I think, and the fact that generally accepted urban planning does not include placing an industrial zone next to a residential zone, that this clearly becomes a case of inappropriate land use and spot zoning as it's set. I do also want to state on the record, kind of in conjunction with some of the other folks that have mentioned, that this parcel does not have access to Alvin Road, and that no access should be given. The roadway was never intended as a thoroughfare for commercial traffic and through a residential neighborhood, and is restricted by the town of Sun Prairie's control over the road, and really more importantly from a safety and ethical standpoint, that there are significant numbers of children that walk on that road every day, and we would not want to have commercial traffic endangering any of our children, including my 2-year-old. So, you know, I think where this is at, we certainly, again, are not opposed to some development going in. We would be open to talking about compromise, but you know, unless the village and the developers are interested in a protracted legal battle for the preservation of the property, you know, we would prefer the opportunity to have a two-way discussion rather than a 3-minute one, and looking at things like a greater than a 1.0 buffer yard between the residential areas, you know, a guarantee that there will not be variances granted. It seems like a number of the recent property site plans have had significant variances, especially in the height of the properties, and that we are kind of restricting what types of businesses would be allowed to go in, as well as the concerns that others have mentioned on the pollution side. And so for that reason, we would ask that the proposal at least be postponed until we can have that discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
The next form that I have is Matt Dunning, 303 Forreston Drive, and I have that you would like to speak.
Yeah, hi. So Matt Dunning, 303 Forreston Drive. I don't live directly by Silver Ridge, but I do work over there at Johnson Health Tech. I'm an avid cyclist. These roads where you're putting these major developments in are big commuter routes for not only people that come from Madison to Cottage Grove, but also go out to Trek. They ride these roads, and they're already busy enough, and everything else that's already gone in has increased that traffic further. And to say now that you're going to add yet another business, and from what we've been seeing, it usually seems to be some sort of like storage facility for stuff where it's not only just small vehicles going through, we're talking big semis, big trucks. I'm really concerned about the safety of the people that use those roads. It's bad. There are no bike lanes. The roads that these traffic is going to be coming out on have little to no curb to even ride on, and people go blowing by there already 55, 60 miles an hour sometimes, and you can have lights, you can be riding single file, you can be riding 2 abreast, which is completely legal, and these people zip right by you. So adding even more stuff in there, I understand that the land needs to be developed as in a TID, but I think before you just go grant an industrial zoning for this, we need to see a comprehensive plan of what they intend to go in there. We shouldn't be using this as a carrot just to pull in whatever we can get for a quick sale. What's going in there? How is this going to be used? How will this actually impact the traffic in that area and also these residents? I took a look at that site map, and yeah, you're basically butting this right up to somebody's backyard. And those houses in there, cheapest one I saw on Zillow said $500,000. How is somebody supposed to recoup that investment after 10, 15 years when you've got Amazon to your east and who knows what to your north? It's just, you're basically hemming them in and destroying this property value. And these are nice homes that are back there. They're well-kept homes. You can see that these people do care about their property, and as a property owner, if somebody was going to slap something like that in my backyard, I would be outraged. But you know, since I don't live there, I don't have a stake in that part, but I do worry about the safety going in there, because like they said, those trucks, they take up both those lanes. They go all the way out to the curb sometimes. They don't look, and yeah, I'm just really concerned that we're yet again adding more traffic, and we don't know what's going to go in there. So what does that look like? I don't think we haven't even really assessed what the full impact of everything we've got going in here is. But thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Those are all the forms I have, but I'm not sure if there's anyone in the room that didn't have a chance to speak yet, if they would like to. John, there's no one else in the room that is wishing to speak at this time. We weren't sure if someone was on Zoom or not.
All right, if you're on Zoom, just either raise your hand or speak up if you would like to speak on this particular item. All right. Then at this point,
May we ask another question or a few other questions?
We have someone in the room wondering if they could ask any other questions that already spoke.
I would say that, the public hearing, I guess everybody who wanted to have a chance to speak has gotten that chance. So really the plan commission, we can't just do like a back and forth conversation for open meeting law purposes. So we can't have that type of forum.
Restriction because of the fact that you thought that it would take too long, so I was just trying to wait so there were additional questions that we maybe could ask, just to see if they had been addressed yet, because certain questions have been asked multiple times, but have been neglected to be actually responded to. So I was curious if they could be responded to.
Well, now the plan commission is going to discuss it. So that's where this is going to go after the public hearing portion.
all right, since no one else has comments then, we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting and move into item 7, which is discuss and consider this application from DW Holdings amongst the commissioners around a zoning map amendment for their property off of TT and West County N, from rural holdings to planned industrial. So with that, I'll turn it over to any commission member that has a question, comment.
I have questions. John,
Okay,
I got
Alex, please.
thanks, John. I got 4 I wrote down here. 2 of them are linked, I guess, and so I'll just go one at a time, and maybe Aaron can help me through this. What I wrote down was, again, it's 2 questions in one. Why now, and how does this help the village? And I guess to qualify, pertaining to rezoning it, right? So it's RH right now. You're looking to move the PI. We have no construction documents. How does that help the village?
So I guess why now, basically for the reasons Dennis pointed out, it would help them facilitate finding a user for the property. We have instances where a property gets rezoned when a specific project comes forward, and we have some cases where it's done in advance like this, like the Commerce Park, that was all rezoned when the park was formed, and then the projects filled in over time.
All right, we didn't rezone it when it became part of the TID, though, right? For this parcel, it's RH now. It's in the TID 10. Is that true? I want to make sure if I make something up, let me know. In the example of Commerce Park, it was rezoned when it was brought in. So this wasn't rezoned then. The village didn't feel like, for whatever reason, I wasn't there, necessary to zone it then. We don't have a construction plan. Okay, so what I'm not hearing is it helps the village. I understand the marketing piece, right? And I can market a piece of land any way I want. It's RH now. Part of the marketing would be like, hey, we need to go to the committee and get it approved for whatever. Right? So I guess the other question to unravel it is, say it goes to, and I'm saying that correctly, PI, that's going to be planned. Okay. So say theoretically it's PI. If a residential developer comes in, we would just go back through the same process to put it back to RH.
at least it would actually have to have a comp plan change as well, because it's not identified as residential in the comp plan now. So it would have to be a comp plan change and then a rezoning.
Rural holding, yeah, yeah. And we've done that before too, I think. We've updated comp plans and we've updated different scenarios, but we've updated the comp plan, because it also, because the market drives what's to build. We have a plan, we have a vision, we have a comp plan, but the market ultimately says, hey, we're gonna build here or not, and we've seen that in Commerce Park. We wanted stuff, and it's still some vacant lots, right?
But we've typically done the rural holding on stuff, even other, like where the Public Works building is, some of those parcels until they were, even though the park was approved, they kept parcels rural holding until they were sold.
Right.
So it's common that we do that.
When we had a vision for what was gonna be, like a comp plan, I guess, okay. And then, I guess my last question around that access that we keep talking about, and you mentioned it in your thing too. Why, I guess two questions tied to one. Why are we discussing access to that site now when there's no plan as to what it actually looks like? Like, do we need it, do we not need it? And I guess the question really is there access now? Is there a way to get to the property through that road now? And that's why we're talking about a gate. There's a gate there now. I haven't been up there. Is there a gate there now? We need to install a gate. There is access and we're gonna limit it. Or there's an idea that we need this in the future. Like, why are we talking about that now when we don't have a plan for what's gonna go there?
Basically to make it clear to the property owner that that'll be necessary in the future, that they can't use Alvin Road.
And this is binding? That would be binding at this stage, this early, without a construction plan, that would bind and carry through? Or we wouldn't change our minds and say, yeah, you can have that road?
Right, so since it's a condition of the rezone, it would be binding in the future. So, theoretically, if they're not fine with that condition.
We can't hear you like on the outside.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Sort of.
There we go. Jeez.
I can hear you now, Rick.
All right. Struggled through there. Thank you. So since it's a condition of the rezone, it sort of runs with the rezone. So it's theoretically going to be incorporated into the site plan. I think my microphone's acting up.
Do you guys want me to just real briefly share my screen of the Dane County parcel map to show where this is and that little access point and how it exists today, or appears to exist today?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, Judge.
So you're saying, just to summarize, you're saying it would be binding, and there is access now?
Right.
That was sort of the two questions. There is
Right.
access now, and we want to, there is no gate there now?
No.
Okay, and so we're making a binding stipulation that there will be a gate, it will be locked, and it will be for emergency access only, and that's binding?
Right, and if there were to be, if it were hypothetically used for other purposes, we could,
Unbind it?
no. So basically, if it's being used, like if the developer is using it for something that we've prohibited, right, then we can either cite them for zoning ordinances, we can,
It would give us
Yeah.
cause to deny the future
Right.
request. They're going to draw a road, they're going to connect it pro through, and we're just going to go no, because we have a binding stipulation that says you cannot create that connection. Or the-
correct. So this essentially runs with the land through this approval.
So it's not our, so we bind it, you have to have a gate, the gate falls down, they just start using it. How is that enforced?
So at that point, we theoretically have a few different options of doing it. I mean, since it's a condition of the rezone, hypothetically, there is an argument that the rezone wouldn't be effective if they violate it. Otherwise, it's treated as a zoning ordinance violation, and we would do it through a citation enforcement.
You couldn't,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also not just up to us. I mean, the town
Right,
control the
that's-
access on their side of the boundary. If they're not happy with how we have this access set up, they could just block it off, which
That's correct,
we've
yeah.
seen that all over the place in the town of Cottage Grove, right?
so, okay, so the town can put Jersey barriers up and be, you can have your gate all day long on our side. But then they'll just Jersey barrier it and be done with it.
Yeah, so
We have no stip that that the town has to keep it open, has to provide a path. It's not our property, it makes sense, right?
correct. We could enter into some sort of agreement with them that would say this is only going to be used for emergency services. It's going to be only emergency personnel will have access to it. No other users will have access. So sometimes that, just that way, both village and town have an understanding on the use of Alvin Road.
The Madison and the city of Monona have that around Monona High School. They have gates that are
Yeah.
only able to be opened by emergency.
Yeah. And we have Jersey barriers, never mind, other places.
I have some questions about traffic studies and additions of more traffic and how the traffic study works with the roundabouts, and maybe Josh, I'm not sure, or Aaron. I know they're not in our jurisdiction, is that correct? We don't have control over how big they are, it's
Right.
WSDOT?
Right, those are county roads, both TT and N, so the county's looking at the traffic at the same time. It's a good question, and as part of the site to the north of Silver Eagle, that site that's being proposed right now is creating another TIA traffic impact analysis for their site. We've asked them, both the village has and the county for sure has, because they're more directly impacted, to take this parcel that we're showing or talking about today and assuming a traffic load out of that. Now it's zoned. If it were zoned the same as the other parcel to the north, what would it potentially generate for traffic? So they're looking at that as part of theirs too, as they make that connection to County Trunk Highway N. We just recently received that a couple days ago, so I have not fully dove into that TIA yet, but we will be talking about it at the next meeting when we review that northern site of Silver Eagle, so north of Silver Eagle.
Thanks, Josh. Just a follow-up on that is how much maybe it's not updated enough then with just getting the results back. How much capacity do we have left on those, on the roundabouts? Or is that something that we'll continue to monitor as more projects have their traffic impact analysis?
Yeah, it's something we'll continue to monitor. I mean, the county wants to continue to monitor it as well, because it's their roadways. But we had quite a bit left. When I say quite a bit, level of service. If you recall, when we talked about Project Silver Eagle, a roadway and an intersection is graded by a level of service, A, B, C, D, E, F. And it's kind of like the grades in school, right? A is the highest, means you have a lot of level of service, a lot of capacity left on that roadway. Once you get to D, you typically look at a change at the intersections. And the level of service is based on a delay. How much delay when I arrive at that intersection on average do I have? So at the roundabout, for instance, is the delay above 50 seconds, then you're going to start to see a level of service D, and you're going to roll into having to try to create some improvements there. With the Silver Eagle development, we were still seeing level of service A and B at those roundabouts on a majority of the movements. And when we first were discussing the site to the north and this site to the west, depending on the use, but at least what they're proposing now, it really didn't seem like that was going to tip the scales of having to have an improvement at those roundabout intersections. Now again, I haven't dove into those numbers, but at first glance, when we were looking at their numbers that they were proposing for output of vehicles, there wasn't as much of a concern to the county at that point. A lot of people don't understand that because these are warehouses, there's actually not a lot of traffic in and out of them. Yes, there's heavy vehicle traffic, but the employees come for their long shift periods and then they leave. And a lot of the stuff is stored in these facilities for longer periods of time. It's not like things are in and out all day long. Yes, they have shipments that come in, product is stored there, and they have shipments that leave, but it's staggered throughout a period of a full day, and potentially if they're a 24-hour facility, even through the night. So it's not like there's massive peak amounts of traffic right during your morning and afternoon rush periods. So that's where it's a little different. This isn't, you know, commercial, some of the commercial park stuff where you have businesses that have people coming in and out, or convenience with restaurants and other things that you have a constant flow of traffic in and out of those places. This will be a little bit more spread out, and there'll only be arrival of employees at different shift periods, if that makes sense.
Yep, thank you. The next question I had is also about transportation, but more about alternate transportation. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to add on, you know, any conditions like that, but we have the multi-use, off-street multi-use path that was part of the Amazon project, and then to Zilber, and then on the, I believe it's the south side of Faber Road. If that multi-use path continues down to the emergency access road, I don't know if now is the right time to address that or during the site plan, but that's something that I would be interested in seeing.
So I think we could include that as a condition, just say like any approved site plan would need to include a multi-use path.
I think that would be beneficial and get some connectivity over to more residential areas. So I think the other mitigation strategies to minimize the impact on the neighboring residents, is there some way we can add into conditions some kind of discussion piece, or how can we make sure that we
Yeah, so it's hard to come up with a condition on the fly here, because it's probably something that's a little bit more appropriate for the site plan, because that's usually when we talk more specifics about, you know, the light, the noise, and all those, when we impose those conditions. So I think the lighting can be addressed specifically in the site plan.
and same with, well, we talked about the buffer, the
Yeah, so the lighting, it could be similar to like the buffering, where you just recommend a condition of the lighting will match or exceed village ordinances.
So that's something we could add on here.
Correct, yeah.
Is there anything that we could add on to have that continuing discussion, or I feel like maybe putting into writing that trust that we will come back and involve you in the process and seek your feedback and on the next stage of the development. Not to say that we're gonna, you know, do everything, but we can listen and try to come to compromise or minimize impact.
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to include that with a condition of rezone. So I guess it's, you know, how is that actually enforced, right? And so, you know, there's going to be presumably at some point a site plan approval where there will be more of that input and more of that discussion. And if there are like TID requests, then there's certainly a discussion that encompasses that as well.
I think that's all I have for now, unless I think of something later. Thanks.
Are there questions, comments from commission members?
If I can, I have a question about the gate access on, was it Elvin Road? If it's locked, does every officer in the village, every fire truck, every fire personnel, how does the emergency personnel get in there if it's locked? Every Dane County cop have a key to that access?
So, I'm not an emergency services expert here, but it's like, I think it was Lyle who suggested like a knockbox. So that's like a standard thing that are on a lot of the commercial buildings or apartment complexes in the village, like having those knockboxes. So that's something where all the emergency services personnel have access to that. So it'd be a similar concept to that, where if you're an emergency services person in the village, you would have access to it.
Perfect, great. The other question I have is if by chance this gets approved and this develops before the Ziller property, who pays for Barber Road and getting the access back to this, this parcel of land then? Does this developer, does Zilber, even though they're not developing, I don't know that we can force them to pay for something if they're not developing.
So, like, as far as the gate and the, like, improvements on their site, that would all be something that we would typically ask the developer to pay out of pocket.
So between Highway N and getting to the property, whoever would buy this property would end up paying for that then, correct?
So Faber Road is going to be extended by a separate developer, and that's a project cost for them.
I guess to clarify, that has to happen first, right?
Right,
So,
right.
If that doesn't happen, right? If that doesn't happen, then there is no access. There is no access.
So if it doesn't happen first, then whoever purchases or develops this would be, have to pay for that access, then, correct?
Right, so everything theoretically would go up to their property line. Utilities and Faber Road, if all goes according to plan, that would go right to the property line, and they'd have to do all their on-site work and any improvements to Alvin Road to provide the emergency access and the gate, and any other improvements that might be necessary for the site.
Perfect, perfect. And I guess I see there's value to the village with the development in that, you know, by having the zoning change, it possibly could develop into light industrial sooner than later and increase tax dollars. Instead of getting pennies, we're getting dollars. And again, as we all know, industrial business is just less of a burden on all the taxpayers than it is residential. So thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions from commission members?
Yeah, I'm back, John. I had a
That's
couple
fine.
of.
Go ahead.
Without the site plan, I guess we're talking about the access. Why do we even think we need the access from the Alvin? Sorry again if I get the names wrong. That road now, like, why don't we just say there is no emergency access as part of that development, and then if we need it, we stip it back in based on recommendations from emergency services. So at this point, treat it as an island, leave the parcel independent, because we don't know even what we're doing over there, and say emergency services hasn't determined if they want it or not, or emergency services has determined they want access through that road.
Spoke with Chief Lang from EMS on Monday, and he was in favor of that.
Okay, so that was, okay.
Yeah, and it's easier to build in the capacity on the front end than trying to come back and, you know, once the project is built, it's hard to get the developer to put something in at their own cost at that point. So it's easier to build in excess capacity at this point, just for the emergency services use.
So they will have to build not only, okay, so it's a gate and a road, okay. How much is the application? What's the fee for that? Okay. Non-refundable?
For a zoning change?
For the zoning change, yeah. How does that work? Is that refundable? Is that not, how does that work? It's not refundable. Okay, I don't know. I never asked before. Thanks.
Any other questions or discussion from commission members? Any consideration of the motion?
I have one. I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
What was the written justification of the requested zoning change? Don't believe that was included in our packet. It's number 2 on the application.
Have that done.
Thank you.
So do we have an incomplete application and we should wait till we get all the information?
So you could theoretically ask for additional information. So the Plan Commission, right, its role is to either recommend approval with conditions, or denial. The other option would be, if you feel like there's incomplete information at this point, you could ask for some more information. The one thing I would caution is we can't just sort of like keep extending it into perpetuity. At some point, it becomes an effective denial. But theoretically, you could ask for, address this at the next month and then make a decision if you felt like the application needed more information.
I mean, even if it's mechanics, just speaking mechanics as you are, even if it's denied at this point, it can come back when there's an actual plan as well, right? I mean, it's not like things aren't denied forever.
Right, and it's at this point too, this would be a recommendation to the board. So if it's recommended denial, it still goes to the board for consideration. It's just at that point, it's the Plan Commission recommending denial.
Unless it's tabled.
Correct. You could ask for additional information and bring it back at a future date.
And then it wouldn't go to the board for review until
Correct.
until it passes plan.
Correct.
Any other comments, questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the application from DBW Holdings LLC for a zoning map amendment to rezone parcel 08113219501, 0811321831111, and 08113219376-1.
With conditions?
For planned industrial, from rural holdings to planned industrial, with conditions.
I'll second.
Thank you, Heidi.
I do have a
If
comment.
there's further,
If-
further discussion, please.
If Troy is interested in adding on 2 additional conditions based on discussion, that the site plan shall include an extension of the multi-use path and lighting shall meet or exceed village ordinance. Is that okay with you?
I'm okay with that, Heidi.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Sounds like we may have to do a roll call. Right, Lisa?
All right. Allen,
Aye.
Brinkmeyer,
Aye.
Justison,
Nay.
Murphy,
Aye.
Sale,
Nay.
Schultz,
Nay.
Williams.
Aye.
So it's 4-3.
Motion carries then. All right, next then we have to discuss and consider an application for the Village of Cottage Grove for a site approval for proposed improvements in the portion of Bakken Park. There is a site plan in the packet. I don't know if-
I might be able to pull it up too here. Hold on.
Okay,
Can you see that? That, John?
yes, Josh, I can, thank you.
Yeah. Would you like me to kind of go through the site plan, Sean, just to kind of demonstrate and kind of what this is about, and then also show the renderings for that structure?
That'd be great, Josh. Thank you.
Okay, so kind of what you're seeing here is the kind of last part of Bakken Park that's being planned. Grove Street is what was improved along that kind of north-south section last summer. And then what you're seeing now is just kind of the overall layout of this park. You have the parking lot feature that's here that circulates through, right, that's connected to Grove Street. You have 4 tennis courts down here at the bottom that I'm circling. Let me zoom in a little bit. 4 tennis courts here that can be also striped for additional pickleball courts. We also have 8 actual pickleball courts just north of that parking area. 5 flag football fields. The detention basin there has to also be expanded to the north to take up some of this impervious area. So there's a little bit of an expansion. You can imagine the detention basin out there now. We're adding another third capacity, maybe just a little bit more than that. And there's a multi-use path that kind of makes a connection through this entire site, just to kind of create some connectivity so that you don't have a large green space without some walking surfaces. And there is a restroom / shelter feature right here, kind of in the middle of all of this as part of the park. Is there any specific questions about this layout, or should we talk a little bit about just the architectural side of that feature, of that building?
Josh, I think you're on a roll. Let's cover that and then open it up.
Okay, can you still see that new screen I just brought up, or is it showing the old one?
It's showing the old one.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Let me share this. Okay, so you see what this building is planned to look like. You see the view of it. You know, the long version of it. There's an open portion of it. Half of it's open, you know, to the air with water and bubbler features there on the wall on that side. And then there's a bathroom on either end. I'm going to flip to the next view of it. So this is the open section part. So we're looking at it from above. There's a unisex bathroom on either end of that shelter with this little storage area and the mechanical rooms to kind of feed these 2 bathrooms and the water fountain areas that's out into this open space. The idea behind this is kind of a prefab structure that we're going with here is that these features, the brick and the stone in the block and the architectural shingles and the side panels would all look similar to what you see out at Bakken with that structure now that was put out by the Splash Park. So we try to mimic some of the same colors and the same look so that they would match as closely as we could. And again, this is a prefab, so we'll be a little bit limited on some of the color stuff, but we should get pretty close. I could show, just for everybody's, see if I have it, for everybody's reference, you know, kind of what we're trying to match, right? As part of this prefab shelter, we'll try to match the same sort of color palette that you see out at the Bakken Park splash pad area. Any questions? I can jump back to a different view too if you want me to.
Is the size, what's the size of the building compared to that one? Is it similar? Is it smaller?
It's going to be smaller than that one. Let me just
20 by 40.
Sean may know off the top of his head.
20 by 40.
Yeah. Do you know what the other one is? I mean, your current one is out there, Sean. It's quite a bit bigger than that, isn't it?
Yes, significantly bigger. I don't know the exact dimensions.
Okay.
I can get them for you, though, if you'd like.
I'm just trying to picture size-wise what it's going to look like, and is that large enough for that much activity being planned out there?
So Sean might be able to reference this a little bit. You're not really going to rent this out or anything. You're just going to have some picnic tables and everything else, just more of a shade structure out in this with some restrooms, correct? This isn't really meant for a venue of any sort.
No, it's really just meant to provide restrooms on that side of the park. Obviously, we do have larger facility on the other side of the park. It's not like it's a mile away, but yeah, the intention is to not make that necessarily a reservable facility so that there will be birthday parties. It's really just to service the courts that are there.
So you can't see the other building on this. I was going to see if I could show you the other building, but we can't see it here to kind of compare the sizes. But like Sean said, it's 20 by 40. So 20 feet wide, 40 long.
The idea. Sorry, Josh.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I really like the idea that we're gonna have a park that's complete. This is awesome. I do have a question as to what the need for the shelter is. We've got the shelter that's 3 years old. Across the street from there, you've got the Lion Shelter, which has restrooms. Across the ball field, you've got restrooms at Fireman's Park as well. All of this is within, what, 300 yards of each other? Why do we need another shelter there?
Right, so this is the area, you can see the Google map now, correct?
Yes.
This is the area kind of that we're talking about. There's a shelter over here. I think you were talking about the other kind of shelter up here in Fireman's Park. I think there's some restrooms down here.
Correct, yep.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is two things. One, it gives us some storage to actually program that space with pickleball, tennis, flag football, again, in that little storage area. The restrooms that would be closest to that area are at Fireman's Park in the quote-unquote hamburger stand. Those are not accessible, meaning they're not ADA accessible. They're, obviously you can go in and out of them, but they are not ADA accessible. So we would need to do significant improvements to make that accessible with the rest of the park.
What about what about the Lion Shelter? Is that ADA accessible?
Yes, it is accessible.
And that's even closer than the one by the ball diamond, correct? Where the shelter's gonna propose to be?
Where's the Lion Shelter at? That's not this one, is it?
Yes,
Right
that
there.
is.
Yep, that's it, Josh, yep.
Yeah, so I mean, you're looking at, I'm just gonna measure a distance, right? You know, the other shelter's gonna be roughly over in here, you know, it's 800 feet away or so. It's probably about right there, actually. So about 700 feet, you know, you can go to the other Bakken one. Over here, it's about 700 feet. They're all about 700 feet. I think there was a little thought too, Sean, of just even wanting a shelter to just get out of the sun a little bit. Like if you're playing in any of these courts, you know, if you wanted to take a break and you want to get out of the sun, you can go sit under something. You know, I know there's restrooms here at the same time. Those are relatively easy to add if you already have the shelter piece of it. And sewer and water's pretty easy to connect to too, because they've been stubbed out from the Grove Street improvements. So I think that was part of it too, just provide some sort of a shade area down here without having to walk all the way across and back over to one of the others. Just a thought. I mean, Sean, you might have some other input to that.
No, that's exactly correct, Josh. And as we program those courts, a lot of times if it's a hot day, people will be seeking shade, and that will provide a little bit of shade for that.
So that can't get accomplished with tree plantings and some park benches and things like that?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of plantings around there, but everything's going to be new growth, so it's not going to provide a lot of shade immediately.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, sorry, can I go? Okay. I think it looks good. I mean, I think, and I'm not quite sure what we're exactly approving the exact thing or the ideas. I mean, 5 fields seems aggressive. The space between they're all numbered 5. You know, in between them with, you know, for bleachers. I don't know what a flag football team consists of. 5 kids running around. I mean, they're big fields, so you could, if you're going to have 5 fields, I guess the anticipation is you're going to have at some point 5 occupied. I also understand it's 30 degrees outside and no one's using them today, so you got to weigh time use averages into that as well. It seems tight, you know, if you're going to try and do a bleachers or people are going to bring easy ups. You know, I mean, I've been to these fields and people camp all day long and there's hibachis and it's an amazing time but it seems tight.
It's really just showing, so a flag football field is 70 by 210. And this is really just showing that we could get 5 of them in there if we needed to. A lot of times when we run our program, we're running as many as 4. The basic design is that it's a multi-programmable space, whether whether we need another full-size soccer field, or rugby needs another pitch, or we want to do lacrosse. It's not just dedicated to flag football, so those are basically just there to kind of show the space.
So the field itself, the big rectangle, it's all gonna be, wrong words, but like mode consistent, like if I walked up on a non-painted day, I wouldn't be able to tell that there's 5 fields or one giant rugby field.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless something was painted there, right? The idea is this is all open, big green space, and it can be programmed as such. Sean, just as you were laying it out, right? Sean, you were saying, can I maximize this and get 5 football fields in, and let's just see what that looks like representative-wise, so that we can see if we have the space, where to put the path, you know, things like that, how much space we needed between the other stuff, what do we have available at the end of it?
Does the programming of the space, that you're used to the space, there's soccer fields down there now, right? There's 2?
Yep.
2? Does that conflict? Would you be neglecting other fields because this is there, or that it helps accent the ability for teams to practice?
It helps. It gives us some more flexibility for sure. I mean, in the summer, just for example, that we could have lacrosse or ultimate frisbee there, which we wouldn't be programming that space really at all in the summer, and then it becomes more of a shared space in the spring and fall with soccer and rugby.
Okay, cool.
And to this point, rugby uses our soccer fields, but maybe they'd be interested in this. We're not really sure yet.
Okay, thanks.
I was just going to add on from I'm chair of the Parks Committee, so just to tag on to the need for pickleball courts and the draw it'll bring. There's a lot of pickleball leagues and people looking for space to come into, you know, various communities and have the competitions, and you know, hopefully we can draw some of them into our local businesses, and having the facility right next to them, I think would be desirable to host those types of events. And it is the shelter is one of the alternate bids in our bid packet that we would, you know, Strand's preparing for the park plan. So there are a few different alternates that, you know, we'll consider, but this is kind of the future direction that we wanted to see for that remaining space in Bakken. I don't know if I captured that. The parks, just the committee's discussions.
And equally as important is that the village currently has 2 tennis courts, and this would give us, you know, quadruple or triple what we have. So that's an important component as well.
So any other site-related questions from commissioners?
Just mechanics. I'm always asking technicalities. Number 8 says, discuss and consider the application. Was there an application submitted and it's not part of the packet here as well, or what's the mechanics of that, or is it just brought for us through the memo?
Our project, we're just kind of, it's as much for your information as anything else.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from commission members?
I'll move approval of the site plan for the proposed improvements in a portion of Bakken Park.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Future agenda items, Aaron, anything to highlight?
Looks like we'll have the site plan amendment from the rugby club for their lights on the next agenda. And then the village board approved the housing task force's housing study, and we'll start looking at some of that here in this committee as well.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. All right, anything from anyone else? Otherwise, we'll move right to item 10.
Fred.
Thank you, Fred. Is there a
Second.
second? Kim, non-debatable, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're adjourned. Everybody have a good rest of your week. Thank you very much.
Everybody, thank you.
Recording stopped.